Well, tonight we're thrilled to welcome Cindy Crawford, businesswoman, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and just a general force of nature. She is the founder, voice, heart, and soul of her brand and businesses, including Meaningful Beauty with Guthy-Renker, the Cindy Crawford Home Collection, and she also is a brand spokeswoman for Omega Watches. I'm told by Ben that Meaningful Beauty just passed its billionth dollar in revenue, with a B. Wow, that's a lot. We'll talk about those companies and products tonight and her advice on building an enduring brand. Besides business, I'm also told that she did a little modeling. Who would have known? Cindy was and is the original supermodel. She started a cultural phenomenon where models aren't just faces in magazines and on runways, but are celebrities in their own right. In the 1990s, Cindy was the face of Revlon, which is the it girl in beauty. She has graced more than 1,000 covers of magazines, including Vogue, Elle, W, Bazaar, Cosmopolitan, and Allure. Let's go over all of them. Hopefully soon it will be the Trojan Family magazine. That will be the only one that's not on the list. She pioneered fashion TV as host of MTV's House of Style and signed multi-million-dollar deals with the likes of Pepsi and Revlon. When others in her field were out partying, Cindy was thinking about what's next and how to build a brand, her brand. She has brilliantly parlayed her modeling fame into a business juggernaut that spans beauty, fashion, health, and home. Let's take a look at some footage from her career before High Def, including this. Please welcome to USC, Miss Cindy Crawford.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
It's a treat.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm
Hello.
here, right?
Welcome.
Okay.
Please sit down.
Thank you.
What a treat to have you here at USC.
Thank you. My first time on campus, as I was telling you, and it's a beautiful campus, so thank you for having me.
That is the greatest thing, that this is the first time at USC. Let's
I
not
know.
make it the last.
Yeah, absolutely.
That long drive in from Malibu?
Yes. Around, yeah, it was a good hour and a half in traffic, but I didn't want to be late, so I left plenty of time because PCH was closed, and you just never know in LA, so I've learned to make allowances.
Yeah, and coming from Malibu, it could be plus or minus 2 hours.
Yeah,
so you really have to make
exactly.
allowances. Well, thanks for being here. In the audience is predominantly students, so 18 to 22, all majors, but a good concentration of business here. And so for those of you who are new to the series, we like to talk about people's careers, but also about their philosophies and how to apply them. And so we want to just sort of talk about your life. And I want to open with something you said a couple days ago on the phone. And it was about your greatest resource, your time, and what you choose to spend it on. And I think that's just a great way to open.
Okay, so I was actually speaking last week at a conference, and it was a Q&A, so just in talking, we were talking about, how we know that money is one of our great resources, and if you think about how much time, and you guys will see as you even move on in your lives past studenthood, where you have to plan what you're going to do with that resource. You meet with your financial advisor and you make plans. How am I going to budget this resource? And what occurred to me is that our most valuable resource is our time, and how often we don't take the time to make a budget for how we are going to spend our time. And I think that's really important because once you've established what your passions are and where you want to expend your energy, you really need to come up with a way to do it. People often ask me, how do you find time to work out, or how do you find time for this? And I always say, you don't find time, you make time. Because no one comes up to you and just hands you, okay, here's an hour, go take care of yourself. Right. If I'm going to do that, and if it's a priority for me, if it's important to me, then it's worth making the time in my day for that. So the idea was all around budgeting your time in a way that reflects your passions and your goals and what you want to accomplish.
So that serves as sort of a first filter on whether anything gets through. because you're going to wind up saying no to a lot of things in order to protect your time, right? Particularly you.
Well, it's funny because, and my husband's here somewhere. Where are you? Somewhere in the back, I think. But every year, my New Year's resolution is to say no more. Because we all get sucked in every day to, I don't know, I have 2 children, so, you know, baking the cookies or, and a lot of it, you know what, you can buy the cookies, it's fine. Or different things like that. So it's just to figure out, again, realizing that my time is my greatest resource. So where do I want to give my time and which things give back to me? That's where I want to give my time and my energy.
Well, speaking of that, we know how many invitations you get, so thank you so much for taking the time with us. It's really
my
very
pleasure.
generous of you.
It's not my usual audience, but I'm excited. It's also nice to be introduced as an entrepreneur in a way because I didn't have like a typical journey to entrepreneurship. So
there is not really one set path. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship.
Right.
There's so many different ways
I
to
had
do
very
it.
unconventional.
Yes, yours is a little bit atypical.
Right.
I tried to follow it. It didn't work for me. But luckily, there are other ways to do it. So if you don't mind, let's go back before sort of fame and all the other things that came, and let's just talk about sort of where you grew up. Where were you born? Where did you grow up primarily?
Right. So I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from a small town in northern Illinois called DeKalb, and I am the second of 4 children. My dad was different things, mostly a manual laborer, an electrician. He was a glazer, which my sister thought was a donut glazer, because it was when the Dunkin' Donut commercials, like it's time to make the donut. So he would get up early and was a glazer, so she just thought that's what he did. But he put glass in buildings. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom for most of my younger childhood. And I grew up in a very small-town, blue-collar world. Didn't lock our doors at night. My grandparents both lived, you know, in the neighboring towns. I had tons of cousins, and it was really a great place to be from, and a great foundation.
And growing up, had some jobs early on. You always worked. What were some of the jobs that you held when you were younger?
Well, I did always, well, not always, but starting in DeKalb, Illinois, where I'm from, it was the home of, it was called then DeKalb Ag. It's later Pfizer I think, took it over. But all the kids for summer jobs, if you were a certain height, you had to, you either started at 14, or if you were tall, you could start earlier, working in the cornfields, and for minimum wage. And it involved everything from, you know, picking bugs off of the corn stalks. It was not glamorous work at all, but you know, if you worked a couple weeks in the summer, you could make enough money for back-to-school clothes and kind of get you through the school year. And so that was my first job. I also cleaned houses. I had an aunt who I cleaned houses for, and she was very particular. I had to use a toothbrush to scrub the faucets. I remember resenting every minute of that. And then I worked at a clothing store in my small town on Saturdays. It was good because you got a discount on your clothes. I don't know if I ever brought a paycheck home, but I got some cute clothes out of it. And I learned to drink coffee there with the ladies. I remember when I was in 4th grade, I had a student teacher, actually. And when she left her 4-month period of time with our class, she kind of went through each student and gave them, you know, oh, you're going to be this, and you're, you know, I don't know, different things. But I don't remember she gave anyone else. But what she said to me is future Miss America. And the reason it was important wasn't that I had any interest in being Miss America, but that it was the first time someone gave me a vision of a bigger life than the one that I was born into. It was like, oh, wait, I could move away from DeKalb, Illinois, because, you know, my grandparents were there, my great-grandparents were there. I just didn't know people who did that. So I remember it kind of stuck with me just as an idea, like, maybe there's a bigger world out there. And then, let's see, and then in middle school, I wanted to be the first woman president. And then I wanted to be a nuclear physicist, only because it was the most interesting thing I could think of. It just sounded good. But I really didn't have any relationship with that. Just I was like, okay, that sounds fancy. I want to do that.
And
And a
families,
teacher. And both my sisters are teachers.
all great things, and you still could be first female president. You might have to run off, but you can still do that. What about what happened in your family when you were in high school that sort of changed your perspective on independence?
Well, and I'm sure a lot of you have gone through this. My parents got divorced when I was in high school, and of course, it was hard on us as a family, but it was also very hard financially. It was, my family was barely making it when we all lived together, but then when my parents got divorced, and we're supporting 2 households, and just things got very tight, and also my father used his financial power in a way that I felt was controlling to my mother. But it's interesting, and we talked about this on Monday when we had our little pre-interview, that my sisters, I felt poor growing up. Not in a bad way, just poor. But neither of my sisters have that same memory. So I don't know what it was that I was expecting or wanting that was different than my sisters. So maybe they don't have the same thing, but I saw my dad controlling my mother through money, or through withholding the money that he was supposed to give her every week to help support us. And I think the lesson that I learned was I'm never going to be her. I'm not going to be controlled. I'm going to be my master of my own destiny, that I don't want someone else to be able to control me through money.
That really does define you throughout your life when that happens.
Yeah, for good or bad. I mean, I think there's definitely been, I think I've had to learn in some ways to unlearn that, to be able to be vulnerable, be able to be reliant on other people. But it made a big impression when I was 16. So.
It sure does. And you said your mom sort of didn't limit you in sort of what you could be. What are some of the, like the primary lessons you learned from your mother?
Right. Well, I think the greatest gift that a parent can give a child, and certainly the greatest gift I was given, was unconditional love. And my mother, I had, like we all do, 2 parents, and I got gifts from both of them. But the one from my mother was this idea: you got an A? Great. You got a B? Great. You got a C? Great. She was just like, are you happy? You knew she loved you no matter what. You didn't have to be the best on your softball team, the best student, the best whatever. She was just your rock. And that is something, now that I'm a mother myself, that I want to give to my children. What I got from my dad was ambition. He did value you got an A+, you got straight A's, you got this. He was the one who rewarded that. And it actually was a really great balance, because it's like my mom was like open arms no matter what, but that you can get complacent with that too. So the fact that my dad was pushing you to be the best was also a gift.
Speaking of grades, pretty good student?
I was a pretty good student.
Pretty good student?
Mm-hmm.
Straight A's?
Mm-hmm.
Straight A, pretty good student. And at the same time, around 16, you get discovered by a local photographer, right? Mm-hmm. But your first foray or audition to modeling didn't go well. How did that work out?
Well, it was, it was one of those overnight successes, right? That takes 5 years to get, from DeKalb to the cover of Vogue. The very first, there was a local photographer in my small town he was the local photographer. I mean, he shot everything from a fire to a parade to a high school football game. So I think he saw me in a crowd at a high school football game, and he was doing pictures of girls. There was also a college in my town, Northern Illinois University, so he was doing pictures every week for that, of the co-ed of the week, and he asked me to do it. And my parents were very suspicious of his intentions, of course, so they accompanied me. But through him, that started a chain of events that eventually got me to a modeling agency in Chicago. But the first one I went to, they were like, I don't know, and what's that thing on your face? You might have to have that removed. And it was, not the warmest, kindest, fuzziest introduction. But the moral of, the fact that and I had wanted when I was a kid, because most kids don't like anything that sets them apart. I wanted to get my mole removed, and I had asked my mother, I want to get my mole removed, and she was like, okay, that's fine, but just remember, you don't know what that scar will look like. You know what your mole looks like. But really the interesting thing is that's the thing that made me most memorable. Before I was Cindy Crawford, people were like, who's that model with the beauty mark? And I think that's what I love, like reminding my daughter when we have things that we think make us different, it's that uniqueness that it's oftentimes the very thing that sets you apart from everybody else. So it's learning to embrace that, which is easier said than done.
And that applies not just for physical appearance, but sort of weaknesses that you think are weak wind up being your biggest strength later in life when you realize it. So with all that, you're modeling, you're going to school, graduate. Where'd you graduate in your class?
I got valedictorian.
Valedictorian.
Actually, I was co-valedictorian with David Olive. I have to give him credit.
That's a good footnote in history for him. He's glad he's co-valedictorian with you. And you get a scholarship to go to Northwestern.
Yes.
Great school.
Yes.
Very competitive, going to the big city. And you select a very easy major. What was it?
Chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering.
Well, I could get a scholarship. And that's why I chose it, really. It was like they needed girls in engineering, and my family did not have money to send me to Northwestern. So they told me if I went into engineering, I could get a full ride, which was great. And I was like, okay. So it was like chemical, physical, or some other kind of engineering. I was like, well, I like chemistry. And that's how I ended up in chemical engineering. I'm still not sure what a chemical engineer does to this day, so.
Neither are we. It doesn't matter. And can you talk about the experience, as a Chem E major, you have to take calculus.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk about that experience and how that sort of defined your outlook on life?
Yes. Well, fortunately for my generation, the generation before me and 2 generations before me of women, they worked so hard for women to have equal rights. So I grew up, I never felt like I had to prove that I was as good as the boys. I just felt like I was. I didn't have to prove that. And I kind of got through my whole high school feeling that way. And then I had taken calculus in high school. But then when I went to Northwestern, I was like, I'm just going to retake it because I didn't want to I was like, I'll take one easy class. Well, just because I'd taken it already. So I said, I'll take one easy class and then have my other classes hard. And I was modeling at the time, and I remember I missed like the midterm, the calculus midterm. And so the professor had me take it in his office like the next day. And I got 100% on it, and he accused me of cheating. And it was, and also when I walked into his class the first day, he said to me, honey, I think you're in the wrong class. And it was the first time I felt, wow, I'm being judged by the way I look. And there's a lot of perks that have come with the way that I look. I mean, I've built a whole career on it. But there's also that side where people make assumptions about you because of the way you look. And that was jarring to have that experience in college. But I think, and we talked about this the other day, now that I'm much older than that, I have learned how to play the game. There's still times where I know that if I'm saying the same thing that, let's say, my business partner who's a man is saying, and Ben, you know what I'm talking about, it gets heard in a very different way. So what do? I have a male business partner who can be that voice for me. Sometimes I need that. And then I get to, sometimes, you get to take advantage of the way, that sometimes I can just play, you can take advantage of the way people treat you that way too. I can kind of just pretend I don't get it or whatever. So you learn how to work the system, and it's not fair. But instead of spending your whole life fighting, I guess what I've chosen to do is just figure out how to work my way through that. so that, and it's just fine. It's just, you know, sometimes it's a little annoying, but you work it out.
Yeah, you don't expect that at a university, but... So you're doing well at Northwestern, you're modeling. After one term, you have to make a decision. What do you decide to do?
Well, I guess I didn't have to make a decision, but I felt like at that point, I couldn't do both things well. I mean, it was, you know, certainly my class schedule at Northwestern was challenging, and I really started working a lot as a model, and it just, it started to feel like I wasn't going to do either one well. So I felt like, yes, I need to choose. Again, in terms of budgeting my time, what am I going to give my time and energy to? Because I don't like to do things halfway. And obviously, modeling, and especially then, you didn't feel like it could wait. You know, by then, at that point, I thought, well, wow, at 23, I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do with my life, or at 25. The industry has changed, but I knew I could go back to school. I mean, it would be different. It's certainly different going back to college, not, you know, when you're 5 years older than everyone else. But I thought, if I really want that information, if I want to take those classes, if I decide I want to be a doctor or whatever, I can go back and do that. I knew that modeling, it was, the moment was then, and it was, I just felt like this is my chance and I have to take it. But it was a really hard decision because academics had been so important to me all through school, my high school, and it was kind of like, wow, I'm abandoning this dream for another dream. So it was a difficult decision, probably one of the most difficult decisions, especially up until that point in my life, the most difficult decision.
And certainly risky as well for
Yes.
taking that. You know, that's sort of analogous to an athlete leaving school early,
Mm-hmm.
or in today's times, you know, it's some people leave college for a tech venture or a startup
Mm-hmm.
that they just think that this is so ripe, I have to put all my time in. So that was your tech venture.
Yep.
It's paid off pretty well.
It worked out. I always say it worked out.
So take us through a little bit of your rise in modeling, and then we'll get into your businesses. Your first big break, I think, was Vogue in 1986.
Yeah.
And 9 years later, your Forbes magazine is ranking you the highest paid model in the world. But it wasn't a smooth trajectory the whole way. Can you give us some of the highs and lows of rising to fame?
Well, I mean, it's not that there isn't lows, but I don't know, maybe my memory's failing, or I choose not to dwell on the lows. But I think, look, for a young woman, and I moved to New York, and you know, it was very overwhelming for me to go from a small town to, you know, New York City. That's what I felt like. I remember not knowing how to get a cab. I couldn't figure out why I'd put up my hand and some would drive by and some would stop, until finally I realized, oh, the light. If the light's on, that means it's empty. But no one told me that. Like, you have to learn that stuff. But this first part of modeling, there I was, and I was just a sponge. I was just an open book. I was just watching everybody. What's the photographer? I mean, well, I know what the photographer does, but what does the art director do? What does the set decorator do? Who really has the power here? Who's calling the shots? Because certainly, as the model in the beginning, you're not. You are very well paid, but you stand where they tell you. You put your hand in your pocket when they tell you. You smile when they tell you. But that was okay. It was like school. I was like, okay, let me just learn and figure this all out. So I was fortunate, and you know, the stars were in alignment. And once you do a Vogue cover in fashion, it's like the seal of approval. Like, okay, if she's good enough for Vogue, she's good enough for everybody else. And then I was fortunate to get to really travel the world and do all these other things. But it was kind of, I always see that is like the first part of my career, which is when I was in the take it all in mode. But, and I think this applies with anything, if you're interested and you keep your eyes open and your ears open, you learn. If you ask the right questions, if you pay attention, you learn. And at a certain point, and probably around the age of 26, 27, I was like, okay, I want to flip it around a little bit, and I want to start taking what I learned and doing my own things.
Yeah. And so you leverage some of that into previously sort of new territories for models. Mm-hmm. You also shared a story where there was an agent who was booking you in Chicago, and he gave you an ultimatum.
Oh, yes. Well, this kind of goes back to taking chances. When I first started modeling in Chicago, there was a photographer he was the big fish in Chicago. Like, if you weren't working with Victor Skrybneski in Chicago, then you might as well just, resign yourself to the world of catalog modeling for the rest of your life. Unfortunately, he really, I think he felt like my mentor. He took me under his wing. And I learned so much from him. And I worked for him almost every day for 2 years. But New York agents calling, different jobs, and finally there was the right thing that I wanted to go and do, this big job in Egypt. And I asked him, I had my agency say that I was going to go and do this job, and I wouldn't be available for this other job that he was doing, which was like a 1-hour tiny thing. And he said to me that, well, first of all, he said, you don't have a very easy face to photograph. So he said, I'm the only one that can make you look good. And if you go to New York or Egypt, I will never photograph you again. And this was like, he was my bread and butter. And it was very scary. I really didn't think he meant it. It turns out he did. But I did go, and he did mean it. But it was a great lesson for me because I learned about not putting all your eggs in one basket and not letting someone else have that much control over, you, because it's your life. You're not just an extra in someone else's life. So I took a chance, and the great thing about having my mother with this unconditional love was that she was like, well, of course, what's the worst thing that can happen? You'll come back, there's no failing. The only failing is in not trying. I wish the photographer would have been that generous with me as well, but he had his own story that he's on. And we actually, 20 years later, he got in touch with me, and we've had like a little reunion. Because as much as he was petty in that moment, he also taught me a great deal. So it was nice to come full circle.
Right. Well, that's it. I'm sure he feels quite differently about that decision now than you do. Let's talk about, you mentioned some things, some controversial decisions you've made in your career, some things in your perspective on regret, how you look at that. Can you share that with us? I thought that was just very interesting, the way that you the lens through which you look at regret.
Yes. So I have, we were talking about regret and mistakes, and I was saying that I've done some things that have been more risque or controversial. I've done Playboy a couple times. I did a very controversial cover of Vanity Fair with Katie Lang where I was straddling her and shaving her. But all of those things, when I knew what I was signing up for and I voted myself in, I never regretted any of that. Even if there was pushback and negative press or whatever, I felt good about it because I was rooted in my own decision. The only times I've ever regret things is where I got talked into doing something, where my gut was telling me don't do it, and I let other voices be louder than my own inner voice, and I did it anyway. And those are the things that I regret, when I didn't follow my own truth. Because in the end, it's like, and we haven't really got to the branding part, which we're going to talk about, but it kind of leads into that, which is I know my brand, Cindy Crawford, better than anybody. I might not be a marketing expert or an advertising expert, but I'm an expert on Cindy Crawford. I'm actually the expert on Cindy Crawford. So, but it took me a while to figure that out. It took me a while to go, yeah, okay, I'll listen. And I have people, I've had my same publicist for over 20 years. I've had my agent for probably almost 20 years also. And I want to hear their opinion, and I weigh that in. But in the end, I go with my gut. And I think that when you do that, you don't regret the decisions, even if they don't turn out the way that you thought they would, because certainly not everything turns out the way you had hoped it would.
And you have to convey that brand to other people, both in words and visually. For people who aren't in design and fashion, can you explain what a brand book is and how you use that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've learned to do is create a brand book. So a brand book is, let's say you're doing a skincare line or a clothing line or a furniture line. Who are you selling it to? What's the vision? So internally you create this document, and I actually think it's a really important thing to even just do for yourself. What is your brand? Think about who do you want to talk to? And in a brand book, you define it. You're like, okay, she's a woman what kind of car does she drive? A minivan, because she's a soccer mom. Okay. What kind of dog does she have? Where does she shop? What kind of TV shows does she watch? Because the more you can visualize who that person is, the better you can make the right connection and the right decisions. So I've really expanded on that idea of a brand book, even to think about, where it's not specifically required, but it still helps you. It's like if you have a very clear vision of what you're doing, this brand book, it's easy to weigh a decision against it. For instance, like if my brand book is all American, whatever, at the time, let's say sexy, but not in an intimidating way, healthy, because I've done exercise videos and I do skincare. So you go, okay, that's the Cindy Crawford brand. So if someone comes to me with an idea, oh, we want to do a cigarette campaign with you. Well, I can weigh that against my brand book, and I go, it doesn't make sense. It's an easy decision. But sometimes if you don't take the time to define your brand, what you're trying to do, then you get sucked into, oh, it's a lot of money, or whatever other motivating factor there might be.
Yeah, and you have to do that almost regardless of what business you're in, or even if you do it personally. Can you tell us what Meaningful Beauty is and how it came about?
Well, Meaningful Beauty, I guess I just want to back up a little bit. So I started, my first kind of foray into doing my own thing was an exercise video. And it came about in a very organic way, which is that I had worked out with a trainer for a long time, and I felt like what I learned from him, besides being able to fit into the clothes from on the runway, was all about empowerment. And so he and I had this idea, and at the time, Jane Fonda was the only one who really was doing exercise videos, which was a different generation than mine. So we were like, let's do one that speaks to my generation. And it was a great project because I got to hire the director. I got to work with the art director, and I found that I really liked being involved in the whole project, not just being told where to stand, what to wear, how to smile. So I had a great first experience. And then I had been with a cosmetic company, Revlon.
But hold on,
okay.
What was the name of that?
That was called, something, Shape Your Body.
Shape Your Body.
Yeah.
So I don't want to gloss over this. So this is before sort of digital downloads. How many copies did you sell?
A lot, and I don't remember, and I
5
knew
million.
you were going to ask
5
that.
million.
Yeah.
5 million. Not
Yeah.
downloads, not views, sales.
Yeah.
Not a small.
It was successful. It was. Well, it was successful in a lot of ways. Like, I still think it stands to this day. I'm still like, and that's the other thing. You always want to do something that if you're, like I always say, like if my friends see this and at a party, if they come up to me and go, oh, I just saw your new infomercial, I want to be proud of that. I want to go, oh, you did? Great. Instead of, oh, So, like that exercise video, I feel to this day, I'm still proud of. And it did, I think it just, we caught a wave. We were lucky. We were in the right place at the right time with the right product. But for me, it just started, that was probably my introduction to entrepreneurism. Like, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is interesting to me. And then I had been with Revlon for many years as a spokesmodel. And when I was 35, my contract was getting ready to expire, and they were trying to renew. But I don't know, I had this relationship with a doctor, and we had talked about doing a skincare line together, and just the timing felt right. And so I did not renew my Revlon contract. and I partnered with Guthy-Renker, who is I think they're the best infomercial company. And the reason I chose infomercial, and it was a hard decision to make, it wasn't, I definitely interviewed everybody from super high-end to, chain drugstores, like who do I want my brand to speak to? Again, go back to your brand book. Who do I speak to? And I felt like because of Revlon and Pepsi, I wasn't the super high elitist brands. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I like to buy some of those things. But I don't feel like that's who my audience is. I feel like my audience, I'm from the Midwest. It's about accessibility. I have 2 sisters. I always think, would my sisters like this? Could my sisters use this? Could my sisters afford this? So in making the decision where to do Meaningful Beauty, we decided to partner with Guthy-Renker because I felt like 30-minute infomercial, you have a chance to tell your story, and that we had a real story. It wasn't a made-up thing. This was a doctor that I had been working with for 7 years, and even the name, Meaningful Beauty, it was intentional to talk about that, look, I'm not going to just try to sell you a million creams that don't do anything. It's every single product has to be meaningful. So we had an idea, we shopped it around, we decided to partner with Guthy-Renker, and I thought, I'm going to do an infomercial and I'm going to make millions of dollars overnight, right? That's what everyone thinks, like you go on QVC once, that's it, you're a gazillionaire, perfect. What I know now is how much I didn't know about the business and how much I didn't understand and how much I still don't understand. And I've learned a lot. And I know we're going to talk about some of the things I've learned in that experience, which...
Sure. And, you think about the risk, again, you go past it, but here's Revlon who's going to stroke you a large check to be a spokesperson. 0 risk for you, 0. And you forego that and launch a company and a new brand. There's a lot to be said about that.
I guess at that point in my life, though, I had made the big paycheck. And not that I was like set for life, but there comes a point where you want to participate. Just the big check is very nice and it is very safe. But, sometimes you feel like you make a great impact and the stock's going up or whatever, and your check stays the same. And I guess I believed in myself and Dr. Sabah and the idea and the intention behind Meaningful Beauty enough that I wanted to take the chance and participate in the upside.
And Meaningful Beauty is a line of skincare products, and how is it different than a lot of other skincare products out there?
Well, it's so funny. Skincare products, like people want Botox in a bottle, or they want all these miracles, and I really try to sell the idea that skincare, in the end, it's skincare, but you can take care of your skin, and I think a lot of you here are too young to be worrying about it yet, but there will come a time, and I promise you, and you'll remember me saying this, that you will say, yikes, I really, I want to take care of my skin. So the unique thing that we had was a ingredient, this melon complex, which is an antioxidant, a super antioxidant. It's called SOD. And so we were the first to be able to use it in skincare. We figured out a way to put it in skincare. And it's also a system that it's easy and complete. So there's a story there about how, like, I want to take care of my skin, but I don't want it to take over my whole day. Like, constantly searching. I want to know I'm taking care of my skin, and then I want to go on and be a mother and a wife and a businesswoman and all those things. So I felt like other women would want the same thing that has worked for me.
And we said in the opening, I don't know if you heard, but Ben just shared that you guys just passed your $1 billionth in revenue on Meaningful Beauty. That's just
wow.
That is
that what all the clapping was?
Yes, it was. Yes, that is $1 billion with a B. And what's fascinating is that's not your only business. You've got several more, and we won't have enough time to cover all of them, but let's just talk, and the students are going to ask questions too, so they'll pick up some of these as well. Let's talk about Cindy Crawford Home. What's your role? Tell us what the line is and what your role is in creating the line.
So I was approached about, probably about 7 years ago about doing a furniture line. And a home that my husband and I had done in Brentwood was in El Decor, and Jeff Seaman, who owns a privately held family furniture company, but it's also a billion-dollar company in the Southeast called Rooms to Go. He had this brainstorm, did I want to do a furniture line with him? And I was like, I like decorating my own home, but I'm not really sure that people will accept that from, I said, I have to think about it. And so I came down and saw their business to see who I would be getting into business with. And they had done a ton of market research. So they already felt comfortable that people would be interested in seeing this. And I think the way they framed it to me was, and this is true, and I've come to see it more and more, that style is not just about, what you wear. It's about what kind of car you drive and how you decorate your home and how you entertain and what kind of music you listen to. And that style, so if you have style, your style filters out into all areas of your life. So that women would be, and women primarily buy furniture and are the decision makers of that kind of income in the family. So that they would be interested in seeing what I had to say about furniture design. So I work with a team of designers, and we have a nice business now.
A nice business. Again, she didn't tell me this, but I've read that the Cindy Crawford home collection grosses $300 million annually. And how involved are you in selecting product?
I'm very involved because I just feel like I've spent 20 years building my brand, through all the things that I did, the MTV, the George Michael video, and all the Vogue, and all those really fun things that you do to build your brand. And that if I'm going to put my name on something now, that's very daunting to me. So that I really want to make sure, again, that I'm proud of it. If someone says, "Oh, I bought one of your couches," or this, that I'm excited about that. So, am I drawing? I'm not a designer, but I would say I'm more of an editor and a curator.
But you select and approve every single product, whether it's face cream, bed sheets, sofa, you are involved.
Yes.
And product versus name, Cindy Crawford name versus which is more important? The product? The product.
I think, look, the great thing about celebrity is that it helps you, like I always say, I can get someone to look at it, but if the product isn't good, it doesn't matter whose name you have on it. And we try never to forget that the product has to stand on its own. And that's the most important thing. I can help people I can get eyes on it. And then the product has to speak for itself.
And then there are also those who speak for the product. Can you tell us the importance of salespeople, and what are some of the things you do to make sure that they are focused?
Yes. Well, one of the things that I've learned, and actually through the man that's my business partner on the home collection, is how important it is to get your sales force on your side. I think a lot of times people think, okay, we have Cindy Crawford, she's coming to Atlanta to promote, let's say, her home line. Let's do a big autograph signing, and hundreds of people will show up, and blah, blah, blah. And we do that too, and it's all great. You get some press. Really, when people are in the store, no one's buying furniture, let's say, or whatever, because or the book, they're all focused on the event of you being there. So what we do is we really make sure we take at least 2 hours every place that I go and meet with the sales team. And we do this at Meaningful Beauty as well. Like, you want to connect with those people that are representing you every day. And if you can get them on your side and win them over, they will work so hard for you. And I just see it. I mean, we were just having calls with the sales, with Meaningful Beauty, you have like all the phone operators, and we're actually filming me, they all work a lot of them work out of their homes, their home offices, or whatever. But just a video message, just again, connecting with the sales team. And I actually learned a lot of that from my husband too, in a little bit different way. He has owned, 35 restaurants, and he always says his biggest asset is his employees. because they are his representation to the consumer every day. You know, you can't be everywhere at once, so you have to make sure those people are representing you in a way you want, and the only way to do that is by being connected to them.
Right. No, that's great. And other businesses that can you tell us about the JCPenney partnership and what that is?
Yeah, well, I had, actually, it's just wrapping up right now. When I'd done my furniture line and it was successful, JCPenney had asked me to do also a home line, but not furniture, like soft home, it's called.
Furnishings?
There's all these names, soft home, hard home. So soft home is like sheets and towels and all that stuff. And this was one of those things that didn't turn out the way that everyone hoped. Signed a deal, did some product, and when I make deals with companies, here's another, a philosophy for me, and I learned it from my first agent, who's no longer my agent, but I did learn this great lesson from him, which is, if I'm going to sign a deal with someone, I always say, look, I don't want to just sleep with you. I want to get married. Because I want you to commit to me to we try to do 3-year deals, because sometimes that first hit off, it doesn't work. But if you have another company that's invested in you and you're invested in them, you have 3 years to try to make the relationship as good as it can be. So with JCPenney, we got married, for a 5-year marriage. But something totally out of my control, they changed management. And my line, and this has happened to me before, the person that brought me in and who was my cheerleader was out, and there was a new guy in, and a lot of times the new management team comes in, they want to bring their ideas, they want to bring their people, and the new guy, who was from Apple, I think, I'm forgetting his name, anyway, he wanted to bring in Martha Stewart. And there really wasn't room, the pie is only so big at JCPenney. So in order for them to give her a big enough piece of pie to make it worth it for her, my piece of pie went away. And then it imploded because they got in a big lawsuit with Macy's, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, it's just that was beyond my control. There was nothing I could do about it. I showed up, did what I was supposed to do, but the circumstances changed, and you just have to keep moving forward.
Well, you've done so many deals, there's bound to be some that don't work out like this
right.
one, and there's bound to be disagreement. Talk about the importance of integrity in selecting partners and how you evaluate deals. And not just how you evaluate deals, but if things go wrong, how you use that.
Well, and I was just watching, and we talked about Masterclass. I love Oprah's Masterclass, and I was just watching one on Maya Angelou this morning, and she was saying the final lesson that she said was that her mother, or her grandmother actually said to her, just do right. You know what that is, just do right. And I feel like we all do. And so a lot of times what I see what happens in business, and my husband says I'm just a girl and I'm naive about contracts, but I always am like, what's the intention? What was the intention of the deal? The original of intention, when we were friends and we signed this deal, there was an original intention. Let's get back to that. Because sometimes what happens is when things go south, everyone's looking at the contract, the letter of the contract. Well, this says this and that. But it's who cares? Let's be civil and let's say, what was the original intention of the contract? And I think when you use, or the agreement, and when you go back to that, it's very clear to see the right way.
Because, no one wants to be in litigation. Everyone wants to avoid that, and there's usually a way out of it if people are reasonable. Even former lawyers like Ben and Steve know that, and Lloyd. The whole row is former lawyers there, all who found something better to do. Recently, we saw your name in the paper with Urban Remedy.
Yes.
Tell us about that and your involvement with that. How did you get involved with that, and why is it important to you, and why does it fit your brand?
Right. Well, as I talked about before, so I had this, when I first started modeling and I was just a sponge, that was stage 1. Then there's this other stage where I was creating my own product, and I love that. That was stage 2. And now I feel okay, I have Meaningful Beauty is just, as Ben said, it's doing great, and we're just trying to keep it doing great. And I have my home line. But now I'm at a place where I see opportunities, or I get introductions to people, to young entrepreneurs, like, a lot of you guys. And if I met a woman who has, it's really a lifestyle brand, but it started as a juice company. And I liked her. I liked what her message was. And so they asked me to join the board, and I feel like now I get to help usher in other people's success. And it's fun. And I'm not even getting paid to do it. I mean, I think now, the way this all works, and a lot of times, who knows? I mean, you get a small piece or whatever, and it may not ever amount to anything, but that's not why I did it. I did it because I liked her vision. I liked her, and I want to help her. And I guess that's what all these mentorship programs are about, and I know USC does such an amazing job of facilitating that. But it does happen, and I'm just helping her, and it's great for me too, because I do what I want to do. I'm not working for them, so I don't ever have to do anything I don't want to do. But if it feels right, I'm happy to do it.
That's sort of where you are in life, and it's nice to know people like that that realize, look, even if it's a grand slam homer, you'll make some money, but it's probably not going to move the needle for you in the grand scheme. Things that Ben and Lloyd invest in, they're done not primarily financially, but to be part of something special, to help somebody else along. And we hope it makes money,
right.
and that will be great. But it's nice that you sort of know that that's a good part of life to be in.
Yeah, well, and it's also exciting to be part of a little startup like that. And also even because even when I was starting Meaningful Beauty, I mean, the world has changed so much. This whole social media thing and the digital era is totally changed the landscape. I mean, we used to spend, if you had a 2-hour meeting, the last 7 minutes would be on digital. Now, we spend way more time on digital, and it's really like the main driver, and it's just so exciting to be a part of, and who knows what the next thing will be. So I'm enjoying watching, I feel like it re-energizes me, even an idea that I might get from a new company like Urban Remedy. It's like, oh, that would be cool if we do that with Meaningful Beauty or whatever. So hopefully they can all, and because they fit my brand profile, Urban Remedy fits my brand profile because it's about wellness and juice and healthy living, that they can play off each other. One isn't taking away from the other.
Well, we're going to ask questions in a minute, but before we get to that, so speaking of digital, pretty funny. We're all in this race to get the great domain name, and we've all seen those things. Your domain is not cindycrawford.com, is it?
No, because someone else had it, I think.
What is your domain?
It's cindy.com.
Cindy.com.
Yeah.
How do you get cindy.com?
Because I couldn't get Cindy Crawford. And that was a long time ago. That was like 15 years ago that someone took Cindy Crawford. I think it's like some guy in Germany or something has it. And it just, it was like, well, I'm not going to buy it, whenever you get in that thing.
Of course, but getting a first name is not an easy thing to do either, so you must have been ahead of the curve.
I've had that for a while.
That's great. Let's finish sort of this time before questions about family and philanthropy. One of the causes most important to you is leukemia treatment and cure. Can you share with us why that's such an important mission in your life and what your family has done to sort of push forward with a cure?
Right. Well, I had a little brother who got diagnosed with leukemia when he was 2, and I was 8. And he was treated in Madison, Wisconsin, at University of Wisconsin Children's Hospital. And unfortunately, at that time, the cure rate for that type of leukemia was only 25%. And he lived for 2 years, but then he passed away right before he was 4 years old. And of course, I mean, anyone who's lost it, anybody can imagine what that was like for my family. But I think my mother did a great job of navigating us through that. And she was very open about her grief. My mom was very spiritual. And she helped us get through it. But what she also did is showed us how to take that and turn it around for something positive. And, we had no extra money. But she decided to host a dance marathon in my small town and for the Leukemia Society of America. And I remember we raised $200, which just seemed like so much money at the time. And I think by then I was maybe in 5th grade. And it just was a very empowering for me to see, wow, like even if you don't have money, you can do something and you can give back. So I just took that with me for the rest of my life. And when I started gaining, some exposure and making money, I was able to not only help bring awareness to that hospital and to the cause, but also to give money and I actually just went back. I do a reunion with childhood cancer survivors every 5 years, and we've been doing it now. Well, this was the 5th one that I've been doing, and I took my daughter back this year, and it was so great because I spent one day doing hospital visits, and half these kids, they have no idea who I am, but they know that there's someone there that is paying them attention, and I always bring a gift, stuffed animal, something. I'm no idiot. But it's more about them just knowing that someone is loving them or someone is caring about them. And I brought my daughter with me, and she was a champ because some of the kids, are very ill, and, a lot of them have lost their hair, and they don't always, a lot of them they're not happy, and of course you can understand. And then the next day we go and we are with the survivors, and some of these people were diagnosed at 5 or 10, and now they've gone out and they have their own families. They're grown up, and it's a beautiful day to celebrate survivors, and actually even families come whose child hasn't survived, but they still want to be part of this community. But I was saying that I introduced my daughter, Kaya, and I was saying, like, hopefully I'm passing this on to her, just like my mom passed it on to me and empowered me, that I'm showing her that she's led a very privileged life, and yes, that's wonderful, but that also brings responsibility to give back. And so we'll see. Hopefully she'll take the charge.
And that same form of leukemia that your brother had now has a different survival rate, doesn't it?
Now it's 90% curable, that same type of leukemia. So even in my lifetime, it went from pretty much a death sentence to not a death sentence. Yeah. And it's amazing.
So before we turn it over to them, speaking of family, you've received, fame, awards, recognition, accomplishment. Do any of those compare to your daughter Kaya winning the award for citizenship at Point Dume Marine Science School? The importance of balancing motherhood and this career.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a mother, and it's been even better than I ever could have dreamed. And I think my older sister, she said the great thing about having kids is you don't have to figure out your priorities anymore because they're standing right in front of you. And it's just, again, if I look at my brand book and I'm making decisions, like the kids are like front and foremost, like you make decisions like, is this good for our family? But I think that kids, in my experience, learn by example. I always talk about how in the Peanuts, like with Charlie Brown, when all the adults talk, all you hear is rah, 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 rah. And I really think that's how kids listen to adults. Maybe not here, you have kids that want to be here, but young kids, they don't, but they watch what you do. They see how you treat people. They see how you handle stress. And I think that's the way we teach our children. So, my husband and I both, like and our kids, when another person comes to me and says, your kid is so nice or was so kind to my child, that's it's great if they're good in school or sports or whatever, but it's really about how they treat themselves and how they treat other people.
Hello, my name is Dosavia Chanu. Thank you for coming. I'm a senior at USC, and my question is, actress Lupita Nyong'o recently admitted that she did not feel confident about her self-image until she saw supermodel Alec Weck walking down the runway. As America's all-American girl, what advice would you give to aspiring models who do not see enough representations of themselves on the runway or in magazines?
Wow, that's the amazing thing is the idea of beauty, I think, keeps getting broader and broader. And I think Lupita is such a great example because she looks like herself, you know, and she's not trying you actually look like her. She's not trying to look like a Barbie. And I think that's great. And I mean, if you look at some of the top models today, they also look like Coco Rochas and like, you know, they're different than my generation. But I think it's not so much about young models because fashion is a weird, fickle industry, and it's really the power brokers are the editors and the photographers, right? They choose who they're going to photograph and put in magazines. I think the bigger question is, how do young women see themselves reflected in what's out there? And really, I think that's what's amazing about social media. I mean, now like it's like everyone gets a chance to feel beautiful in their own social media. It's like that Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame thing that it's not just one thing that's one image that we see. You go on Instagram and you can see whatever you want. There's an Instagram account that's called Cindy Crawford Mole. And it's people that have moles like me. And you know what? It's like if me having that and that being on the cover of Vogue made someone else feel good about them having a mole, then that's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Crawford. My name is Will. I'm a sophomore. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I was just wondering, you know, we're an entrepreneurship class, so we always take advice from, you know, people who are successful. So I was wondering if there was a moment early in your career, maybe modeling or, you know, whatever, that a moment in time you felt like you really failed, and what you took away from that and how that kind of shaped your entrepreneurship and your mindset going forward as a businesswoman.
Well, there was one story that Dave and I had actually talked about that I didn't get a chance to share, but even before I ever thought about modeling as a career, I was probably a sophomore in high school, and I got a call from a local clothing store saying they wanted me to come and model for their store, and I was like, how did they even hear about me, you know? Anyway, I put my hair in hot curlers, put makeup on, I had an appointment, I went to the store, and I showed up, and I was like, okay, I'm here. And they were like, who are you? And I said, oh, you guys called me for the modeling job. And they were like, we didn't call anyone. And I walked outside and I saw two mean girls from my high school standing outside laughing.
Wow.
So like they had set me up on this thing. But I have to tell you that later when I started doing magazine covers, and probably one of the most famous fashion photographers is named Richard Avedon. And he would always say, when you're doing a Vogue cover, he's like, you have to have a thought in your head. Like, you can't just blank stare at the camera. Have a thought. And a lot of times I thought, take this, you know what. So, I guess that was, you turn a failure into a success, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Yes. Okay.
Hi there. My name is Alexa Trujillo. I'm a sophomore here at USC. I'm a business student. I'm just wondering how, as a woman known for her looks, how have you been able to have people take you seriously when you have a passion for something? And I know you mentioned how your partner is a male, but as a 20-year-old student, what advice can you give to any of the girls in the room?
You just have to charge through it. Do you know what I mean? You have to prove that you. First of all, I would say don't get offended. Like, if someone treats you like, you know, oh, little pretty airhead or whatever, I think the mistake is to like get your guard up. It's like just let that kind of wash over you because you know you're not that, and then just charge ahead, pretend like you didn't even get that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and just be yourself and own what you do know.
Hi, I'm Jackson. Thanks so much for doing this. You talked a little bit about early on, before you had done any of your businesses, how you sometimes felt like you really wanted to be a part of designing what was happening or a part of making what was happening. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about what kept you motivated and how you were able to keep your head down and work hard obviously you were extremely successful doing what you were doing, and then you were able to transition later. But if there was anything that really kept you motivated and helped you to work hard, even if it was something that you didn't necessarily want to be doing at the time or wasn't exactly what you wanted to be doing.
Right. Well, I think a lot of that just comes from the Midwestern work ethic. I mean, I had always worked for my grades. I had worked at my job. So, I mean, I just expected to work hard. I'm not afraid of hard work. And I think I do see sometimes maybe every older generation says this, like, those young people, they don't want to work for it. But, you know, no one handed me anything. I've always worked, and I always showed up on time, and I was prepared, and I gave 100%. I think there were times where, I mean, there was a lot of exciting things going on around me, so it wasn't that I was bored so much, but sometimes I did feel like my brain was underutilized, so I would read. And I mean, I was joking with someone that they were like, well, how did you use your calculus? Or I'm like, well, I would figure out how much money I was making per second. I would, in my head, while I was standing on set, because I would be like, you know, it's not stimulating. But then you figure out other things in your life to do that are stimulating. Because there were times, you know, where it certainly was not feeding me in that way. But I did take, especially in my business, you know, like a lot of people say that it uses you, and it does. So you have to be smart enough to use it back and to get something out of it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Henney. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I was just wondering if you could give me the best advice for someone who would like to follow in your footsteps.
Oh, thank you. Well, nowadays I always say if you want to be a model, you have to be an actress because it's really, if you look at the covers of magazines, it's just shifted. But if you live near a big city, I'm assuming you live somewhere here, you just go to agencies and you just cold call them, and a lot of times they have like one day a month or one day a week where they see new faces. And I feel like the agencies, like I think modeling schools, a lot of times they'll take your money and they'll tell you what you want to hear while they're taking your money. But they don't, maybe they'll teach you how to put makeup on or something, but they are not the ones that are going to make or break your career. Like, they just take your money. So I feel like the agencies, they're not going to waste their time with you if they don't think that you have what they're looking for. But don't necessarily, if the first agency I went to wasn't that excited about me. So, I mean, you kind of have to shop it around. But, you know, then if a couple agencies say we're not interested, then, you know, you might want to have a plan B. But I also think that the path of getting there, there's so many more ways now through, I mean, look at Michelle Phan, right? It was with YouTube, right? She just was doing her own makeup, and she sold her company to, like Lauder or something for, you know, $25 million or whatever. And she wasn't a model. She wasn't really even a makeup artist. She just did her own makeup and started a thing. So there's so many ways now to get there. That's exciting.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Ms. Crawford. My name's Skylar. I'm a freshman here at USC. And going off of what you said about having vision and looking forward, I'm just curious what some of your current goals are, either professionally or personally.
My current goals, well, I have a couple new projects that I am working on. And I think they fall more into that third stage where they're not going to necessarily like make a ton of money or change my life, but they're more passion projects. So one of them is a book, and so I'm working on that, and which is intimidating because it's like there's a real deadline and things like that. And I had an idea for a TV show that I'm in the process of selling, which is exciting. So I think in some ways it's almost like the more you do, because you have more exposure to ideas and people, the more energized you are, the more flow, the more business flow there is. It's not like, okay, now I can rest. You don't even want to because you get energized and charged by that, and you have connections. and you're like, oh, this would be cool. And then, oh, I know this person. I'd like to do that with that person. So to me, who knows? It's like, I never thought I would still be getting my picture taken at this point in my life, but here I am.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Carmen, and I'm a senior. I was really interested to know how you decided what your brand is going to be and how you were able to keep that brand to be so effective for such a long period of time.
Honestly, I think in the beginning it was just happy accident. I think that, you tend to be attracted to like things, but at a certain point, and I would say probably when I was around 22, 23, I started realizing there was a pattern to what felt right and what felt good. And that was kind of the beginning of me starting to think of this idea of, Cindy Inc. What is that brand? What does it look like? And then it was easy because it's just asking the right questions of yourself. I think it's just taking the time and asking the question. It's not really that, it's not like you have to sit there and figure it out. The answer comes easily. It's forming the question and taking the time. That's probably the hardest part.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to finish with one of the points that really struck me during our call. And the course and the series is about finding your personal philosophy, defining it for an entrepreneurial venture. And I want you to talk about the importance of gratitude as a core value in your life and in your business.
Right. Dave asked me to prepare. He's like, well, before we talk on the phone, think about different, if there's like business lessons or turning points in your career. And I woke up the morning before we were going to have the call, and I had some ideas. But the one that I really wanted to talk about was gratitude and how important it is to just appreciate everyone, and I was saying, I try to include the word thanks in every email. I mean, I think email, it's great for little things like, what time should we meet? 2. But so I think too much gets done on email, and sometimes you lose that personal connection, really being able to listen to what the other person's saying and how they're saying it. But that's the world, right? We all do a lot of email. So it's like trying to include those words like please and thanks. And not just typing the word thanks, but thinking the word thanks and sending the intention of the word thanks. Because all these people in my life that, helped me get all this stuff done, I am very grateful for. And it's just, and recognizing like in a meeting, and because I'm a very cut to the chase kind of person, like sometimes you forget, if 99 things are right and 100 things wrong, our tendency is to like, let's just fix that 100. But let's take a second and be grateful for the 99 things that are working right and thank the people who are doing that. And then, okay, and now how do we get to even that last one thing to be perfect? And I really feel like that, it sounds cheesy and new age, but I feel like it comes back. It really, and it sets an intention. And even before you email someone, if you're in a bad mood, don't email. Like, why put that energy out there in the world? Like, my son who surfs, he is, he's 14 years old, and I love that he surfs for this reason. He has such a respect for the ocean and the power of the ocean and a power greater than him. And he said to me that he never goes, he's like, Mom, if I'm in a bad mood, I don't go in the ocean. I get on the sand and I spend 5 minutes letting that bad energy go because I don't want to take it into the ocean with me. So we don't want to take that into the world with us. We don't want to pass that on to anything. So it's like being able to kind of clear your head, set your intention, and be grateful. And I think that all of that, I really think it makes a difference.
Speaking of gratitude, let's finish up this way. She said it's her first time at USC. We hope it's not your last. We hope you'll come back. We hope we figure out things what we can do with you and for some of your companies. But my class, and anybody else who's got this, shift forward 5 years from now. All the things you've heard from Cindy tonight. I want to hear what lessons and takeaways that you're going to remember, and I want to hear them right now. Where's Keyshawn? Where's Keyshawn? Who's got the camera? All right, you ready? I want to see some hands up. Where's my class? Everybody. Okay, just start right here in front. Out loud.
Be the master of your own destiny.
Be proud of what you put your name on.
Learn,
Time is your most valuable resource.
learn to embrace your differences.
If you're interested and you keep your ears and your eyes open, you'll learn.
Speak up.
Don't take bad energy into the world with you.
No one knows your brand better than you.
Just do right.
Keep coming. Keep
Take
coming.
your insecurities and make them your strength.
Imperfections are unique. Give back.
The only failure is not trying.
You are not an extra in someone else's life.
If your product isn't good, it doesn't matter who the names are. Be your brand.
Speak up. Keep more.
Learn to budget your time.
Up front. Here, come around. Got more. Hustle, Keyshawn. We got a lot of people here. We got a lot of people. Out loud.
Be grateful.
Be grateful.
Learn by example. Keep your ears and eyes open and always learn.
Melissa.
Go with your gut.
Your employees are your representation of consumers. He just said it. You're
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Don't take bad energy into the ocean.
There you go.
Remember the original intent of the deal.
Be rooted in your decision.
Don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Don't let insults frustrate you. Let them empower you.
Last couple over here. Hurry up, Keyshawn. I can't hear you. Go ahead. Say no more. Last one. Who's got one? Who's going to close? Right here. One more right here. Let's help me welcome Cindy Crawford. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy.